So welcome to everybody. Welcome to Aslı Erdoğan, who is our guest today, and to Sabine Haupt, who is going to read passages from the novel Das Haus aus Stein. Sabine, can you show it to the people? Do you have the house there?
This is the book, the German translation.
Ah, great. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And welcome to all the others who we don't see, but maybe present. So this is a session organized by the Swiss-German PEN-Zentrums, and PEN, you might know, is a writers' organization with a special focus on free expression, and PEN International is seated in London, but there are 160 regional PENs, and the Swiss-German PEN-Centre is one of them. And actually, we are a very small center with about 200 members. And sorry, we have a very, very loud sound from the studio. Thank you very much. Thank you. So we are a small center with about 200 members, and one of our focuses is Turkey. And we know that Turkey is not ranking first as a country regarding free press and free expression. And today we have a guest who knows much more about that. It is Aslı Erdoğan, who is now in Berlin and in her apartment, and who will be joining us soon. I heard the first time out about Aslı when she was in Zurich as a writer in residence of the Literaturtagen Zurich, and this was in 2012. Since then, I got to know her as an advocate for the Kurdish minority in Turkey. I got to know her as an engaged human rights activist, as a colleague and important voice at PEN, and last but not least, as a gifted writer of literature. So she is here to tell about the current situation in Turkey, especially about Turkish prisons, and we are all here to get to know more about a novel recently translated in German, Das Haus of Stein. Sabine showed it to you. The House of Stone, or just as I said, actually the English translation is called The Stone Building. So in Turkey, it was published in 2009, and it is about the experience of being locked up in a prison, a situation Aslı experienced herself. She was imprisoned 132 days at Bakırköy closed prison for women. Aslı, how do you pronounce this? Bakırköy.
Bakırköy.
Bakırköy.
Bakırköy. Yeah, it means copper village.
Okay, and it is a closed prison for women, huh?
Yeah, it's only for women and children,
okay.
under 18.
Mm-hmm. And this was in 2016.
Yes, and 136 days, by the way, because
I took away 4 days.
Yeah, the first 3 days in the police station. So
okay, thank you very much. So The House of Stone is our focus, and it is a novel, or rather a long poem in prose. People debate that, but for sure it is a challenging text, and one like black lava, I read in a review in the Neue Zürcher Zeitung, NZZ. So the readings today will be in Turkish and in German, the discussion afterwards in English, and those of you who are not capable of understanding any of these languages, you can scroll to or browse to an English version. This is the advantage of an online festival, and follow the text there. So we start with a chapter called The Beginning, and it is the beginning of the novel indeed, and Aslı is giving us an impression of the original first, about 2 or 3 minutes, and Sabine will read us the German version, 5 minutes afterwards. So the book, I forgot to mention, was published by Penguin Random House, and the text was translated by Gerhard Meyer. So Aslı, may I ask you to go first and give us an impression of the beginning of the novel in Turkish?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll be very short because I don't know how many Turkish listeners are out there. Just 2 minutes. Başlangıç. Olgular açık, uyumsuz, kaba. Yüksek sesle konuşmaya hevesli. Dev taşlar gibi yığılmış olguları önemli şeylerle ilgilenenlere bırakıyorum. Beni çeken yalnızca aralarındaki mırıldanma. Belli belirsiz, saplantılı. Kayalar dolusu olguyu edebileceğim bir avuç da geriye dönmeyi başarırsam, parmaklarımın arasından kayıp gidecek bir avuç kumların ezgisinin peşindeyim. Gerçeği söylemiş olur gölgeden söz eden. Hakikat gölgelerle konuşur. Bugün taş binadan yazının köşe bucak kaçtığı ya da güvenli bir mesafede durup sözcüklerin arkasından baktığı taş binadan söz edeceğim. Benim doğumumdan çok önce inşa edilmiş. Bodrumu saymazsak 5 katlı. Girişinde basamaklar var. İnsan bedeniyle yazmalı. Tenin altındaki çıplak, savunmasız bedenle. Oysa sözcükler yalnızca başka sözcüklere seslenir. Bir H harfi alırsın, 2 tane A, Y ve T. Hayat diye yazarsın. Tek sır harflerin yerini şaşırmamak. Efsanedeki gibi bir harfi düşürüp canlanan çamuru saf ölüme çevirmemek. Hayat diye yazıyorum bir soluktan çok derin bir iç çekmeyle. Onu koparıp alabilenleri. Dalından bir meyveyi, topraktan bir kökü koparırcasına. Sana kalansa boş bir kabuğa kulağını dayadığında duyduğun uğultu. Hayat, iliğine kemiğine dek emilmiş bir sözcük. İç sızısını andıran bir uğultu. Okyanuslar dolusu uğultu. Bir zamanlar gencecik bir çocuk şöyle demiş. Sen hayata res çekmezsen o sana çeker. Gözü kara bir çocuktu. Bir karanlıkla ötekinin meleziydi. Taş binayla çok erken tanışmıştı. Bir daha hiç korkmadı. Ya o ilk korkusunu hep hatırladığından ya da unuttuğundan. O gün bugündür yerli yersiz güldüğü söylenir. Farz edin ki taş binaya giden sokakta bir kahve, kahvenin önünde de yaz kış bir adam var. Binanın içinde dev bir avlu, avluyu çevreleyen merdivenlerde insan boyunu aşan tel örgüler. Kimse kendini aşağı atamasın diye. Çünkü insan hayatı taşlarda parçalanmayacak kadar değerli son 1-2 yüzyıldır. Dışarıdaysa döne döne 5. kata dek yükselen bir yangın merdiveni. Geceleri soluk ay ışığının altında basamakları tırmanan gölgeler belirir. Ama kimsenin indiği görülmemiştir bugüne değin. Hangi çağdan kaldığını kestiremediğiniz bir kalıntı gibi hep oradadır, kaldırımlarda. Bulabildiğinde gazetelerin, kartonların, mukavvaların üzerine oturur. Yanı başında boş şişeler, yemek artıkları, kusmuk, idrar birikintileri görmek mümkündür. Ay yüzeyi gibi pürtüklü, derin bir yara iziyle eşit olmayan 2 parçaya ayrılmış yüzü, hiçbir sırrını, yaşını dahi ele vermez. Ama bu yara izini yer yer içeri göçmüş kafatası boyunca izlerseniz, bir dağ yolunu izlercesine, ıssız hüzünlü göz çukurlarının çevresinden dolanıp bir uçurumun kıyısında bulursunuz kendinizi. İnsanların değil, rüzgarın ve ay ışığının, taşların diliyle konuşan bir uçurum. Adını sormaya cesaret edemeyeceğinizden ona alfabenin ilk harfini verebilirsiniz. A. Okay. I hope it wasn't too long.
No, thank you so much, Aslı.
Thank you.
So let's hear now the beginning of the novel in the German language. Sabine, can you take over?
Der Anfang. Fakten sind unverblümt, unharmonisch, grob. Reden gerne lautstark, liegen da wie Felsbrocken. Ich überlasse sie lieber jenen, die sich mit wichtigen Dingen befassen. Mich interessiert auch nur, was sie untereinander tuscheln. Kaum hörbar, doch wie besessen. Ich stochere darin herum auf der Suche nach ein bisschen Wahrheit. wie man das früher nannte. Heute gibt es dafür keinen Namen mehr. Einem leichten Funkeln will ich hinterher tauchen, ganz tief hinunter bis an den Grund. Und falls ich es wieder nach oben schaffe, dann mit einer Handvoll Sand, der mir durch die Finger gleitet, denn um die Melodie dieses Sandes geht es mir. Wer vom Schatten redet, spricht die Wahrheit. Die Wirklichkeit redet mit den Schatten. Heute werde ich vom Haus aus Stein erzählen, dem das Schreiben gern ausweicht, dem es nur aus sicherer Entfernung zusieht, durch die Wörter hindurch. Das Haus aus Stein wurde lange vor meiner Geburt errichtet. Es zählt 5 Stockwerke, den Keller nicht mitgerechnet, und zu seinem Eingang führen Stufen hinauf. Der Mensch muss mit dem Körper schreiben, dem nackten, schutzlosen Körper unter der Haut. Doch Wörter sprechen nur zu anderen Wörtern. Man nimmt ein L, 2 E, ein B und ein N und schreibt Leben. Die Kunst besteht darin, die Buchstaben nicht durcheinander zu bringen. Sonst geht es ihnen wie dem Golem, der zu Lehm zerfiel, als man seine Formel rückwärts sprach. In einem Atemzug, nein, mit einem tiefen Seufzer schreibe ich. Das Leben gehört denen, die es einem entreißen können. Wie man auch eine Frucht pflückt oder eine Wurzel ausreißt. Und dir bleibt nichts weiter als das Rauschen aus der leeren Muschel an deinem Ohr. Das Leben, ein Wort nur, ausgelutscht bis ins Mark, ein Rauschen wie ein Weh, ein Rauschen so groß wie der Ozean. Stellen wir uns in der Straße, die zum Haus aus Stein führt, ein Café vor. Und vor diesem Café, sommers wie winters, einen Mann. Im Gebäude selbst befindet sich ein sehr großer Hof. Und an den Treppen rundumher übermannshoher Stacheldraht, damit sich auch niemand hinunterstürzt. Denn seit 1-2 Jahrhunderten ist ein Menschenleben so viel wert, dass es nicht auf Steinen zerschmettern soll. Draußen windet sich bis in den 5. Stock eine Feuerleiter empor, auf der nachts im fahlen Mondlicht Schatten hinaufhuschen. Hinuntersteigen sieht man von dort aber nie jemanden. Der Mann sitzt auf dem Gehsteig wie ein Überbleibsel aus einer längst vergessenen Zeit. Er legt sich Zeitungen oder Kartons unter, wenn er welche findet. Um ihn herum leere Flaschen, Essensreste, Erbrochenes, Urinlachen. Sein Gesicht, zerfurcht wie eine Mondlandschaft, von einer tiefen Narbe in 2 ungleiche Hälften geteilt, gibt nichts preis, nicht einmal das Alter des Mannes. Wenn man den stellenweise eingedrückten Schädel entlang jene Narbe verfolgt, als wanderte man auf einem Bergpfad, steht man nach der Umrundung der ledierten Augenhöhlen am Rand eines Abgrunds, der nicht in der Sprache der Menschen spricht, sondern in der Sprache des Windes, des Mondlichts und der Sterne. Da man es nicht wagt, den Mann nach seinem Namen zu fragen, nimmt man kurzerhand den ersten Buchstaben des Alphabets und nennt ihn A. Wie ein leerer Sack liegt er vor dem Fenster, so wie auch vor allen Türen, die die Welt ihm vor der Nase zuschlägt. Alle Straßen gehören ihm, doch er geht nirgendwo hin. Als hätte er sich in irgendetwas da draußen verliebt, in den Ofen vielleicht, den Fernseher, hätte ein Loch in etwas hineingestarrt. Im schmutzigen Fenster spiegelt sich seine Existenz. Befleckt ist sie, sehr befleckt. Ein langes Gedicht über das Menschensein. Das bisschen Leben, das er noch in sich trägt, bläht sich manchmal auf wie zu nächtlichem Gelächter. Dann schüttelt er sich vor Lachen, wälzt sich vor Lachen am Boden, steht wieder auf, kann nicht an sich halten, lacht weiter und weiter. Der trübe Schein der Verrücktheit um ihn herum schützt ihn zwar nicht vor Kälte, vor Schmerz und vor Schlägen, aber doch vor den frühesten Erinnerungen an das Haus aus Stein. Sprich nun einmal selbst A. Verweigere dem Wort nicht deinen Schatten, gib ihm genügend Schatten, lass es in der Schwere des Schattens die ganze Wahrheit sagen. Nun werde ich mein Lachen vertagen und sie zu dem Haus aus Stein bringen. Sie werden sich hinter der nächsten Ecke in einer Sackgasse wähnen, aber direkt vor der Treppe biegt ein Weg nach links ab. Dort werden sie innehalten und sich von der Welt der Menschen verabschieden. Der Weg, der sie dorthin geführt hat, bringt sie nicht zurück. Drinnen brennt Tag und Nacht das Licht, grell und erbarmungslos. Und alles und jeder wird eins mit einem Schatten. Auf alle Fragen folgt eine knappe Antwort, ein kurz gefasstes Schicksal, ein Geständnis. Die Zeit wird zu einem Geständnis, entrissen zu jeder vollen Stunde. Der Mensch, das älteste Rätsel, die sprechende Materie. Sie hören mich nicht, oder? Vielleicht hätte ich nicht in der Vergangenheit erzählen sollen. Wieder habe ich an der falschen Stelle in das Lied eingestimmt und wieder in der falschen Tonlage.
Thank you so much, Sabine. Yeah, that's how it ends, to start a song out of key. As a musician, I know that this is a terrible situation when you start a song. The wrong key, everybody looks at you and you are very embarrassed. So we are looking at you, Aslı, now. Actually, this House of Stone, it seems to be a prison. It is a prison. At the beginning, I always thought this is the prison you were in, this women prison, but then all of a sudden I noticed, no, you were in prison 2016, but the book you wrote in 2009. So actually you wrote a book about being in prison before you were in prison. Can you explain us this?
Well, the stone building is actually not a prison, or there is no depiction of a real prison. It is the experience of being confined, being oppressed, being tortured. It can be interpreted as a police station. In fact, there is a station like that. It's a notorious police station in Istanbul. There was. In fact, I took its actual details, except that it has 4 stories, not 5. The stone building is a text that I wrote again and again. And in fact, in its first version, the stone building had 4 stories, just like the actual building, which I had seen when I was a very young girl. I think I was 18. But next time I wrote it, first time I wrote it as a short story, second time a novella. In the novella, this building became 5 stories. Somehow in my memory, the stone building was becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. So I would say the stone building is a metaphor of many things.
Okay.
It is it's of stone, it's actually any system that oppresses you, any trauma. Stone building is a place of trauma. a building that you cannot come out. Everybody has stone buildings in their lives, and it in the memory it grows bigger and bigger and bigger. But in fact, at the very end of the book, we'll see the stone building actually now has no roof. It's just a few walls. It's actually the metaphor of also the memory itself. And in a way, it's the metaphor of literature, of this own book. The stone building is actually also pointing to itself. We are building it, the labyrinths and all this. And in the end, when the writer comes out, she looks back and the stone building is no longer there. It's just a few walls and the rain falling. So it is very open to interpretation, but of course it's not a direct story of prison, which in fact I had not experienced when I wrote this book. I didn't know about prison.
Okay, thank you. But let us compare it now to your experiences when you were locked in. What were you really arrested for? You once wrote, I am in prison for writing about atrocities Turkey has committed. It is my mission to write about atrocities. And but what was really the reason they put you in jail?
Just before I answer this question, I would like to comment. This book was also criticized in Turkey for being too poetic. And they said, this is not the way to approach prison on torture. You have made poetry out of very harsh experiences. And it was a criticism I took very seriously, because it came also from people who were in prison.
Okay.
But when I was in prison myself, I had this question in my mind. And I made peace with my book, because the prison experience, not the prison itself, the experience, actually talked just like my book. You know, it is actually very fictional to write something very, about facts of prison, of this and that. I can do. But in fact, the trauma is not like that. You know, you forget. All I remember of the prison is just in a very big cloud, a few images, but those images are like made of stone, unerasable images. So in a way, I kind of congratulated myself for having known beforehand how this experience lives in you. This is actually what I was searching in this book. I didn't want to write about prison. I wanted to find the language of trauma. At least my traumas speak this language. It's a repetitive language. It is like a trap. You can't come out of it. And somehow unerasable images, like of stone. You want to rip them off your memory, and you can't. And I wanted this book exactly to be like that, that I didn't want to give the reader an easy time, because trauma is not an easy time. And I went to prison, in fact, for the official reason was that I was listed as one of the advisors to Özgür Gündem, a pro-Kurdish newspaper. I was their literary advisor. But the funniest thing is that I was their advisor for 5 years. So it's a totally legal paper. Being an advisor has no legal responsibility over a paper. For 5 years, there were several cases, in hundreds of cases against the paper, never against me or the other advisors. One is an ecologist, one is a linguist. It's a symbolic board of advisors from different fields. Suddenly, 5 years later, it turned out to be the biggest crime in the Turkish law. I mean, I think the important thing is that not only I was arrested, which is I was ready for, and anybody who touches some taboos in Turkey eventually gets arrested. But I was arrested from 302, destruction of the unity of the state, which is the heaviest article in the Turkish law, with the aggravated life sentence. And as far as I know, I'm the first in Turkish literature, a writer of literature, to be asked such a heavy sentence for being a literary advisor to a totally legal paper. I mean, people call this Kafkaesque. I think it's an insult to Kafka, to this trial. But I think the real reason was that I wrote about, back in 2015 and 16, some towns like Cizre, in the Kurdish populated parts of Turkey, were surrounded by military and heavily bombed, and which caused also deaths of civilians. And these people were burned alive. In fact, just before they were burned, they had a phone call, even to European Parliament. So the whole world is a witness. And later on, all they found out were 5-centimeter bones from these people. The biggest bone was 5 centimeters or so. So I wrote about that. And I knew I would get into trouble because anybody who tried to speak up about Cizre or other things were instantaneously silenced. But I just couldn't remain silent. I knew they would punish me, but I was shocked to be arrested from 302.
And I remember Burhan Sönmez, you probably know as well.
Yeah, I know him very well, yes.
On the International PEN Board as well. He told me once that the government has a plan. First, they start to lock up the academics, and after that, they will lock up the journalists, and at the end, it will be the literary writers. So the situation in Turkey is quite bad, what we hear. But it cannot be true that you go to prison in Turkey just for writing a poem. So what do you think about the idea of Burhan, that sooner or later the literary scene will be part of this purchase, I would call it?
Well, I think when a regime starts to become oppressive, it first starts with journalists. Journalists are always a direct threat to the system. They know. They have the facts. Well, when it gets harsher and harsher, the time comes for writers, for academicians, for doctors. Even now in Turkey, doctors are under persecution. And it never stops. The circle gets bigger and bigger. But the worst thing is that as the circle of oppression gets bigger, there are less and less people who talk. So first, those who shout are arrested. Then, like me, those who whisper are arrested. But then comes the time, even those who whisper in their sleep will be arrested. And now in Turkey, just 2 days ago, 2 people got arrested just for one tweet. One tweet. I mean, let alone journalism and things like that. People get in Turkey arrested for retweeting. believe it or not, retweeting even a photo, even a picture, or just pushing the button like. So many people got arrested for that. I mean, and because Europe often hears about journalists and writers, but at one point, estimated number of students in prison was around 70,000. Can you believe? 70,000.
Yeah.
When it was at the peak.
This is
now
a big number.
It's an incredible number. It's an incredible number. I mean, when the Second World War started, in the whole Nazi concentration camp system, there were 40,000 prisoners. 40,000. 40,000 is not a small number. It sounds small to us. But imagine the numbers in Turkey.
This means that the prisons in Turkey must be quite overcrowded, which
yes,
actually leads me to another very current topic. I think in April, there was a law that about 90,000 prisoners should be able to leave prison because of the coronavirus. Yeah, because the health situation in the prisons are not the best ones, but the ironic thing, or you must say sarcastic thing, is that all those political prisoners were not part of that law, that they seem to be more dangerous to the Turkish people than
mafiosis. Mafiosis, yes. Very famous mafiosi chiefs were released, yes. I mean, yes, this explains actually everything, how they see us. People, 2 days ago, those two young men were arrested for one tweet in the middle of a corona crisis. People are sent to a possible death because of Twitter in the corona epidemic. And yeah, they released most of the I have nothing against the release of common criminals, even the mafia chiefs. Yes, in times of corona pandemic, people should not be kept at prison. Nobody deserves to die.
There was the initiative by PEN International and 24 other organizations urging the government to release as well those political criminals, prisoners. Now, do you know more? Was there any effect, or is there something else we should do, what we can do as PEN?
Well, I don't know. I don't think I mean, they don't learn. I've been trying to talk about conscience. This was why I wrote in that pro-Kurdish newspaper, or before in Radical. I wanted to help to develop a bit of conscience, individual, collective, social. And I'm about to give up. I mean, is it so difficult to tell these people that human life has some value and it has to be kept sacred? No, it's. Okay, I mean, they get angry at a Twitter and they send you a young guy to prison in the corona crisis. What can we possibly tell them? I mean.
Okay, Aslı, let's just leave it there. I give you a short break.
Yeah.
And
okay.
we have an angel flying in.
Okay.
This is actually the name of one of your chapters.
Yeah.
The angel. And Sabine, could you, I think about 5 minutes, give us another impression about Aslı's writing?
Okay, it's one of the dreams. Träume, der Engel. Wir alle haben den Engel gesehen, zu verschiedenen Zeiten, an verschiedenen Orten, auf zugigen Dächern, in kalten, leeren Zimmern, in Gängen, die keiner betritt. Haben gesehen, wie er aus einer Dachluke die vorbeiziehenden Sterne anrief, wie er zwischen Steinen seinen Namen verleugnete, sein Schicksal, die Wege des Himmels gab und nackt und verzweifelt dasaß. Wie er an Abgründen mit schiefem Lächeln die Schwelle zum Unendlichen überschritt. Zu morgenroten, blutroten, flammenroten Stunden haben wir ihn gesehen, in goldenem Licht, im grellen Schein nackter Glühbirnen, in dunklen Momenten, die sich nicht unterscheiden ließen. An den Grenzen zwischen dem Sein und dem Nichts, zwischen dem Sichtbaren und dem Unsichtbaren flog er hin und her, verschwand und tauchte wieder auf. Dem einen fielen nur seine ungekämmten Haare auf, seine Löwenmähne, dem anderen die wie feuchte, einsame Sterne glänzenden Augen im eingefallenen Gesicht. Allzu lange betrachten konnte ihn keiner von uns. Vielleicht sahen wir einen tanzenden Lichtpfeil oder spürten nur dessen lebendigen Hauch, erfüllt von Frühling und Judasbaumduft. Schon das genügte uns. Ein Flügelschlag, ein kurzes Lied, ein aufblühender Augenblick, ein paar Tropfen Regen. Er hatte uns gehört, war im Nu vom Himmel heruntergerauscht, die Hände, die Arme, die Taschen voll mit Mondlicht und vom Sternenstaub besprenkelten Briefen, Botschaften, Versprechen, Melodien. Er hatte Regentropfen mitgebracht, tosende Flüsse, Wellenberge, weite Ferne. So manchem gab er seine Kindheit zurück, manch anderem schenkte er einen Ruf in die Unendlichkeit. Der eine bekam den Duft von Kiefern, der andere ihr Rauschen. Es hieß, er rieche nach einem wilden Tier, nach wilden Rosen, nach Urwald, nach dem Meer, sobald sich der Sturm gelegt hat. Aber zugleich duftete er auch nach Menschen. Er umarmte uns alle, beruhigte uns durch eine leise Berührung mit seinen geschwungenen Flügeln, durch ein paar vergossene Tränen. Er saß gekrümmt da, als hätte er Schmerzen und würde in seinem zu weit gewordenen Körper verschwinden. Sein Gewand war zerrissen, mit Ruß und Schmutz besudelt. Die Regentropfen, die aus seinen nassen Flügeln bildeten um ihn herum keine kleine Pfützen. Er kam vom Himmel her, von einem Ort ganz nah am Herzen und kam für immer. Hatte in aller Eile die Nacht der Welt von einem Ende zum anderen durchquert, als wäre er schon zu spät dran. Auf einmal hob er rasch den Kopf und warf ihn wie eine Marionette so heftig zurück, dass man fürchten musste, er breche sich das Genick. Seine Haare flogen durch die Luft und ein wieherndes, entsetzliches Gelächter ertönte, ein nächtliches Lachen aus tiefsten Tiefen, das von den Wänden widerhallte, auf die Steine schlug und dort zersprang, wild, erhaben, herrenlos. So zeigte der Engel seine tödlichen Wunden. Die auf unseren Körpern rot aufblühenden Schnitte, die blauen Male, die Brandwunden, die urwaldartig verflochtenen Spuren der Schläge und schließlich das Blut, das wie wilde Rosen trocknende, zügellos dahinschießende, endlos quellende Blut. Er zeigte auch seine Flügel, die er nicht mehr zu bewegen vermochte. In einem unermesslich kurzen Augenblick sah ich, dass sein von einer tiefen Narbe gespaltenes, schweißgebadetes Gesicht zu einer leeren Maske geworden war. Dann sank sein Haupt wieder nach vorn, wie beschwert von all den Toten, von deinem Tod und auch von meinem. Und sank ihm herab bis auf die Knie. Seine Blicke brachen wie zwei abgeknickte Zweige. Es war, als platzte das Universum der Länge nach auf und als senkten sich zwei riesige Vorhänge auf seine Augen, die er uns hinterließ. Mutterseelen allein, besiegt, aber stolz, verfiel er schließlich in einer letzten, übermenschlichen, grandiosen Anstrengung in eine Welt der Träume.
Thank you so much, Sabine. Text like black lava. Asli, now you can talk to us again. Asli, we all have the experience of being locked down now, but we definitely do not have the experience of being locked in. You have both, being locked down in Berlin, where you are sitting right now, but for sure not comparable to being locked in a Turkish prison. I have here a letter which you sent to some of your Swiss friends when you were in prison, and actually page 4 you start with sorry, my first 5 days in prison were absolute hell. I was put in solitary confinement cell, which was extremely dirty, in a disgusting condition. You remember that letter? And
No,
you remember the situation?
I remember the situation, but not the letter, no.
Okay. And then you told me, or actually you write in the letter that you were in a cell with 21 women, and you had like compartments for 2 people, and on your door it was written PKK member.
No, that was when I was first taken to prison. I was kept in an isolation cell.
Ah, okay.
And on that was written PKK member, yeah.
But
yeah. Then they took me. Actually, I was not supposed to be in isolation cell, but on my 6th day they took me to a ward, and that was a PKK ward, but there was no sign on it. No, on my cell it was only written that, and only for 2 days. Then they said they wrote my name.
Okay.
Then they learned I'm a writer, and everything changed.
To the good, I hope.
Yeah, better, a bit slightly better. Yeah. Initially, they did not give me any water for 2 days, which is in fact by European standards is considered torture. So after that, I got my water.
Okay. And after those 136 days, you came out of prison, and actually their aim was to silence you, but they didn't manage.
Well, I don't know their aim. I mean, probably I'm not that important for them. I think through me, I mean, to silence me or to, I don't damage them. I think through me, they wanted to give an example. And it was a horror effect. You see, a writer of literature generally taken as a very heavy, very metaphorical, very, I'm not a bestseller, I'm not a star. I am a writer with a limited audience. So even a writer like Aslı Erdoğan is arrested, and I'm not a member of any party, any group. I'm talking of legal groups. So if that happens to her, what will happen to us? People asked. That caused such a horror effect. I think that was their aim. And also, it is it's a one-man regime, and in many ways we can call it fascism. Not totally, maybe it can be debated what is fascism, what's not. And one thing about fascism as I have experienced is it is wantonness. You know, they are not always rational. There is you can't really understand why they did this, why they arrested this, but not that person. No, there is no rationality. This is fascism. Why? Because they could. They wanted this. Someone wakes up one morning and says, I don't like how Adi is smiling. And the same day, the police comes to your apartment. Something like that. Why you? No rational explanation. I think that's partially that.
And your letter actually ends with, please do not forget me and my books. They are my children. And we haven't forgotten you. We have you here, and we are glad you're here and publishing. You told me that there is a book coming out this week, or came out this week in France.
Yes, and for me it's a very big event. I have 8 books in French. All my books are in French, but this book is very special. It is called in Turkish in the Silence of Life, but the French will be Requiem for a Lost City. And it is even more poetic prose than The Stone Building. It is my heaviest book. Let's say it's pure literature. There is it's not easy for the reader. And of course, all the publishers, the moment I said poetic prose, they said, no. It sounds so boring, and it is boring. Now, the first time my poetic prose is being born in a language, and the reviews are very good. Actually, I take very seriously the French and the German reviews. Scandinavians are also very good, but I learned a lot from.
Yeah, I admit I have given here not much chance to talk about your literary qualities. I was much more talking about the political issues, but for the last few minutes that we have, we are going to change this. And I ask Sabine I think you have the intention to tell us a bit about your reading experiences and the novel, or the language of the novel. Sabine, can you take over?
Yeah, it's more like a question, but I think you already answered to this question at the beginning of our discussion. And so maybe I just may come back to this question about the reading and the aesthetic. And the book you are writing and which we are reading today is not a document. In the beginning of this book, the passage that I was reading, you say, I translated it to English, facts are crude and much too loud. And you add that you are looking for a melody of sand and a melody of sand instead of facts. And I'm wondering, how does this very poetic language, this very beautiful style, fit or correspond on the dramatic, really terrifying topic that you are narrating? All this pain and suffering you are telling. And I think it's a little bit the same question that people were asking you in Turkey and everywhere. And perhaps I found some elements in your own writing to answer in another chapter of this book, or even in one of your essays. In the chapter called Jenseits der Mauer, in English it's Beyond the Wall, there is one sentence. I quote firstly in German: Je dicker die Haut, umso größer deine Fantasie. The thicker the wall, the greater your imagination.
Yeah, I know.
Or the last quote I found in your essay, wir sind schuldig, we are guilty. This other sentence, firstly in German, der Text setzt alle Masken auf, derer er angesichts des Todes habhaft werden kann. The text puts on every mask you can find in view of death. And I think maybe I just want to know what you are thinking about. I think these quotes are explaining a little bit what you were explaining in the beginning of our session today.
Well, I try to approach, it is the question of my writing, or the quest of my writing, in fact, from the very start. How do you talk about something essentially untellable? How do you write about concentration camps? How do you write about torture? How do you write about and why? And it is a question that I have surely not found an answer. There are just different orbits around. I take one orbit, I follow it, then another one. Sometimes I come closer, sometimes, but I turn and turn, let's say, around the silence of something basically cruelly silent, or maybe mercifully silent. It's like each trial knows from the start it will be defeated. It is never going to be a victory. And this sense of defeat is also very strong in my writing. Like every word knows it's going to decay somewhere in the path, in the way. Why do I do that? I don't know, probably my psychology also, but it's also not just subconscious.
Asli,
yeah.
Sabine, time is already up.
Okay.
I was afraid that time will run very fast in this meeting.
It's
and
generally very fast. Yeah.
In Solothurn, people would be knocking at the door already, for the next session. Here we can go on forever. No, Solothurn told us they will just shut us down when we are too long. So actually, there is only time for a last final statement from each one of us. Would you like to start, Asli?
Many thanks. Many thanks during all the Solothurn people for arranging this festival, and I'm so sorry we couldn't meet in person. And I hope these lockdown days will end without too severe losses. It does remind of prison. Honestly, it is similar. It's heavy for everyone. It's a traumatic experience. But I really congratulate you for keeping on with the festival, really for giving all of us some hope and resistance, and to go through this. It will all finish, hopefully, very soon. And many thanks to all the readers who listen to us on a Saturday evening. Thank you, and hoping to meet very soon.
Many thanks to you, Asli. Sabine, a final statement from your side?
Yeah, I would just like to say thank you very, very much. And I'm looking forward to meet you somewhere outside.
By the way, Sabine, your reading was wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
I was very moved. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It was so beautiful.
You understand German?
I'm bisschen.
Okay.
And many thanks to Devrim, who also helped us with the techniques.
Mm-hmm.
Teşekkür ederim.
Okay, then I would like to thank everybody who was here with us. We don't know, we didn't see them, but we hope that there were some people around. And I would like to end actually with Asli's end of her lecture, but turn it around a bit, because she's not in prison anymore, but there are still people in prison right now and being tortured right now. And I just ask everybody, please do not forget them and their books. And they are their children. I would like to end with that, and send them letters, send them postcards, and turn them into YEPs. I mean, FIPs, very important prisoners. So, because that can be very helpful to them.
Yes.
I hope you agree, Asli.
Yes, the worst thing in prison is to be forgotten.
Okay.
I mean, you want to believe you are still with the living, so it is extremely important that we think of them and we worry about them and we still try to do something for them. And I think we will eventually.
Okay.
Eventually.
So we leave it right there. And thank you very much for everybody for being here, and meet you after Corona times in Solothurner again next year. Have a nice day.
You too. You too. Bitte.